Your polo has a bleach stain on the pocket that never came out, no matter how many times you've washed it. You bought 4 of them at a uniform supply store in bulk, same as the guy stocking the cooler and the kid running register on weekends. Nobody looking at you behind that counter at 6:40 in the morning, ringing up a pack of Marlboros and a lottery ticket, would guess you're anything but the manager pulling a double because someone called in sick again. Your truck is a 2011 F-150 with 210,000 miles on it and a check engine light that's been on so long you've forgotten what it's warning you about. The bed liner is cracked. The AC works only on the passenger side and only sometimes. You park it in the same spot every morning, next to the propane cage, and walk in through the back door before the sun's even decided what it's doing that day. Your coworkers, if you can call them that, think you're one bad month away from losing the truck. Denise at the second store asked you last week if you needed her to spot you until Friday. She meant it kindly. She had no idea she was offering to loan money to a man sitting on more liquid assets than she'll see in 3 lifetimes. Here's the part that doesn't fit the picture standing in front of them. You own 6 gas stations. Not managing, not franchising someone else's dream, not renting the pumps from a corporation that takes 40 cents of every dollar before you see a dime. 6 locations, 6 sets of pumps, 6 convenience stores, 6 sets of keys that all belong to you and nobody else. No partners. No silent investor waiting on a cut. Every brick, every walk-in cooler, every underground tank is yours outright. And last year, after everything, after payroll and insurance and the fryer oil and the credit card processing fees that eat more than people realize, you took home $1.8 million. Not revenue, not some inflated number a broker would use to make the business sound bigger than it is. Take home. The number that actually landed in your account after every bill got paid and every employee got their check. You could be driving a Range Rover. You could be wearing a watch that costs more than the truck you actually drive. You could hire a manager for every store and never touch a register again, never smell like hot dog water rolling off the grill at 7 a.m., never wear a polo with a stain you've stopped trying to fix. But you don't, and it's not because you can't, it's because looking like money in this business is one of the fastest ways to lose it. Gas stations run on thin margins and thick assumptions. Everyone assumes the guy behind the counter is barely scraping by because most of the time, that assumption is correct. Real margins on fuel itself sit somewhere between 3 and 7 cents a gallon after credit card fees take their bite. Nobody's getting rich pumping unleaded. The money lives somewhere else entirely, in the inside sales, the beer, the cigarettes, the lottery commissions, the fountain drinks that cost you 9 cents to make and sell for $2. But even that money disappears fast if the wrong people start paying attention to how much of it there actually is. If your employees think you're rich, they start asking for raises you can absolutely afford but don't want to justify explaining 6 times a year. If your landlord, assuming you lease any of your locations, catches wind that you're sitting on real money, your rent renewal conversation changes overnight. If a supplier smells success, your fuel contract terms quietly get worse, a fraction of a cent here, a fraction there, numbers small enough that nobody notices until you're the one running the math at midnight wondering why margins tightened without an obvious reason. If the competitor 2 exits down catches on that store 4 is printing money, they build a bigger canopy and undercut your prices until you're both losing. And if the wrong customer clocks that the guy in the stained polo owns the whole operation, that's a different kind of problem altogether. Convenience stores get robbed. It's not a maybe, it's a when. The National Association of Convenience Stores has tracked robbery rates in this industry for decades, and it's not close to zero at any single location. Multiply that risk by 6 stores, and you start to understand why looking like you're barely making rent is not an accident. It's armor, so you keep driving the truck with the check engine light. You keep wearing the same 4 polos in rotation. You keep working the counter yourself 2 mornings a week, not because you have to, but because it keeps you inside the numbers instead of floating above them, and because every hour you stand there ringing up scratch-off tickets is an hour nobody in this town is wondering how a gas station guy affords anything more than gas station money. But the question that actually matters isn't why you look broke. Plenty of people look broke and are broke. The real question, the one that actually explains the $1.8 million sitting in your account, is how 6 convenience stores selling 3-cent margin fuel and $2 fountain drinks somehow print enough money to make you richer than every doctor, lawyer, and tech guy who's ever looked at your truck in a parking lot and felt sorry for you. That answer has almost nothing to do with gasoline. Let's start with the number that breaks people's brains every time you say it out loud. 3 cents. That's what you clear on a gallon of gas on a good day, after the card processor takes its cut. after the state and federal taxes get stripped out before the money ever touches your hands. 3 cents. Sometimes 7 if the market's kind to you that week. Sometimes it's 0. Sometimes, during a price war with the station 2 exits down, you're actually losing money on every single gallon that leaves your pumps, and you're doing it on purpose. Because the alternative is watching every car in a 5-mile radius drive past your canopy towards someone else's. You've priced gas at a loss more times than you'd ever admit to Denise or anyone else standing behind a register wondering how you're still open. You watched a competitor drop to $3.19 a gallon on regular, undercutting you by 11 cents, and you matched it within the hour, knowing full well you were now paying customers to fill up at your pumps instead of the other way around. That's not a mistake. That's the entry fee. Gas isn't the product. Gas is the thing sitting out by the road with numbers 3 feet tall, doing the only job it's ever had, which is getting a car to turn into your lot instead of somebody else's. Because once that car is parked, once that driver walks through your door to pay, or better yet walks inside because their car declined at the pump and they need to sort it out with a human, everything changes. That's the moment the real business starts. That's the moment gasoline stops mattering. Walk the aisles of any one of your 6 stores, and you're looking at a profit engine that has nothing to do with fuel and everything to do with a $2 fountain drink that costs you about a dime in syrup and cup, or a bag of chips you bought for 60 cents wholesale and sell for $2.50, or a pack of cigarettes where the margin isn't huge in percentage terms, but the volume never stops because nicotine doesn't care about price wars. 2 exits down. Lottery tickets alone kick back a commission on every single sale and every winning ticket cashed, small money per transaction, but multiplied across 6 stores selling scratch-offs to the same regulars every single morning. That's a river that never dries up. Then there's coffee, which might be the most quietly profitable thing happening inside any of your buildings. A cup that costs you around 20 cents in beans, water, and cup sells for $1.79, sometimes $2 if you've got a location near a highway exit where nobody's cross-shopping your price against the truck stop 3 miles down. That's a margin north of 80% on a product people buy compulsively every single day without ever once negotiating the price the way they'd negotiate over gas. Hot food runs the same math on a bigger scale. A roller grill hot dog costs you maybe 40 cents once you count the bun, and it sells for $2.50 at the register with nobody blinking because nobody's cross-shopping a hot dog the way they cross-shop unleaded regular listed on a sign visible from the interstate. Fried chicken tenders, the kind sitting under a heat lamp since 6 a.m., run margins that would make a steakhouse jealous because the actual food cost is a fraction of what people hand you for the convenience of not having to stop anywhere else. Car washes are their own quiet machine. You've got tunnel systems at 2 of your 6 locations, and once you've paid off the equipment, a wash that costs you maybe $1.50 in water, chemical, and electricity sells for $8 to $12 depending on the package, and people buy the monthly membership without doing the math on how many washes they'd actually need to break even against just paying per visit. That subscription model alone brings in steady money every single month, whether they show up or not, which is the kind of revenue that doesn't care about oil prices, doesn't care about a price war, doesn't care about anything happening at the pump 40 feet away. And underneath all of it, there's a layer most people never think about at all, the deals happening above your head with the fuel suppliers themselves. Distributors offer rebates and volume incentives tied to how many gallons you move, fractions of a cent that don't look like much on a single gallon, but stack into real money once you're running 6 locations pulling from the same supply contracts. Hit certain volume tiers and your per gallon cost drops. Sign exclusivity agreements with a brand and you get marketing support, signage upgrades, sometimes straight rebate checks tied to quarterly performance. None of that shows up on the sign out front. None of that is visible to a single customer filling their tank. But it's real money, negotiated quietly, that has almost nothing to do with what you charge at the pump and everything to do with relationships built over years of moving enough gallons to matter to the people supplying you. So when you actually sit down and do the math on any single one of your 6 stores, the fuel line on the spreadsheet is barely a rounding error next to inside sales. The pump gets them in the door. The store is where they spend the money that actually pays your mortgage. Gasoline is the bait sitting on the hook, priced low enough to be believable, visible enough to be found from the highway. But nobody ever got rich selling bait. You get rich from what happens after the fish is already in the boat, standing at your counter, buying a coffee, a hot dog, a scratch-off, and a pack of Marlboros, never once wondering why the guy ringing them up looks like he's barely keeping the lights on. So let's actually run the numbers, because gas station owner sounds like a guy barely scraping by, and $1.8 million a year sounds like a typo. It's not. It's just math nobody bothers to walk through out loud. Take one store. A decent one, Not your best, not your worst. Call it $2.4 million in annual revenue between fuel and inside sales combined. Strip out the fuel margin because you already know that's basically a rounding error some weeks. What's left is inside sales margin, payroll, rent or mortgage, utilities, insurance, inventory shrink, all of it. Run that store lean and well managed, and you're looking at somewhere between $180,000 and $240,000 in net profit a year. One store, one canopy, one set of pumps that everybody assumes is the whole business. Now multiply that by 6. At the low end, $180,000 times 6 is $1,080,000. At the high end, $240,000 times 6 is $1,440,000. And that's before you account for the fact that your 6 stores aren't performing identically because they never do. 2 of them sit on high-traffic corners near the interstate exits, doing closer to $280,000 net a year each because of volume alone. One is a smaller, older location doing maybe $140,000 net because the lot's tight and the competition's closer. Blend all 6 together, weight them the way real portfolios actually weight, and you land somewhere around $1.3 to $1.5 million in combined store-level net profit before you've touched anything else on the balance sheet. That's already more than most people make running one location twice as hard as you run 6, and you haven't even gotten to the part that actually gets you to $1.8 million. Because 6 stores run independently would never get you there. 6 stores run as a system does. Here's what nobody accounts for when they picture you as 6 separate businesses duct taped together. You're not running 6 payrolls, 6 insurance policies, 6 accounting setups, and 6 sets of relationships with vendors. You're running one system with 6 storefronts hanging off it. One payroll platform processes all 38 employees across all 6 locations, which saves you real money in processing fees and administrative hours that a standalone owner-operator would be paying 6 times over. One general manager, Denise, oversees daily operations across 3 of the stores personally and manages 2 site leads who report up to her for the other 3, which means you're not paying 6 full manager salaries. You're paying one senior manager at $68,000 a year and 2 site leads at $46,000 each, instead of 6 managers at $55,000 apiece. That's a difference of roughly $110,000 a year sitting quietly in your pocket that nobody accounts for when they picture 6 gas stations as 6 times the headache. Bulk purchasing does the same thing on the inventory side. You're not ordering chips and soda and cigarettes and roller grill product 6 separate times from 6 separate reps at 6 separate price points. You're negotiating volume pricing across all 6 locations at once, which drops your wholesale costs on nearly everything sitting on those shelves by 3 to 5% compared to what a single store owner pays. On inside sales revenue north of $9 million combined across 6 stores, even a modest 3% reduction in cost of goods is close to $270,000 a year that never shows up as a line item anyone notices, because it just quietly widens every margin at once instead of announcing itself. Then there's the real estate, which is where people's math really falls apart, because most people picture you leasing all 6 lots and paying rent like everybody else. You don't. You own the land under 4 of your 6 stores outright. The other 2, you lease because the previous owners wouldn't sell at any price that made sense. But owning that land does 2 things for you at once. First, it eliminates the rent expense entirely on 4 locations, which alone is worth $18,000 to $24,000 a month you're not handing to a landlord. Second, and this is the part people really don't think about, that land appreciates whether you're standing on it or not. Commercial corner lots near highway exits have gone up in value consistently for a decade in your market, which means you're not just running a gas station business, you're sitting on a real estate portfolio that happens to have pumps on it. None of this happened overnight, and none of it happened in cash. You finance your way into this the same way anybody builds anything real. Store 1. You bought with a small business loan, and every dollar of savings you had, and for the first 3 years it barely broke even while you paid down debt. But once it started throwing off real profit, you didn't pocket it. You reinvested it. Store 1's profits became the down payment on Store 2. Store 2's profits, once it stabilized, became the collateral that got you better loan terms on Store 3. By Store 4, banks were competing to finance you because you had 4 years of cash flow statements proving you knew exactly what you were doing. That's leverage working the way it's supposed to work, each location funding the next one, each loan getting easier because the last one got paid down faster than projected. So when you add it up, the $1.3 to $1.5 million in blended store-level profit, plus the roughly $270,000 saved through shared payroll and bulk purchasing, plus the value of land you own free and clear instead of renting, plus interest savings from having refinanced two of your loans at better rates. Once your credit profile improved, you land right around $1.8 million a year in actual take-home. Not revenue, not some number a broker made up to flatter you. Take-home, after debt service, after payroll, after every single expense that keeps 6 sets of lights on. It's not one gas station getting lucky. It's 6 ordinary businesses stacked on top of shared infrastructure, financed patiently, and left alone long enough to compound. Here's the part that actually confuses people once they know the number. If you're clearing $1.8 million a year, why are you still driving the same Silverado you bought in 2019? Why does your wife still clip coupons for the exact same grocery store your cashiers shop at? Why did you personally go back and fix the ice machine at store 4 last Tuesday instead of calling someone? The answer isn't modesty, it's math, and it's fear, and it's strategy, all three stacked on top of each other so quietly that even you stopped noticing which one was driving which decision. Start with the reinvestment, because that's the boring answer nobody wants but the true one. Every dollar that hits your bank account has already been fighting for its life against 6 different obligations before it even gets to you. Store 5 needs a new walk-in cooler compressor, $14,000 you weren't planning on. Store 2's canopy lighting is 15 years old and due for an LED retrofit that'll save you $600 a month in electric but costs $22,000 up front. You didn't build 6 stores by taking profit out, you built 6 stores by refusing to take profit out over and over for a decade until refusing became the default setting instead of the sacrifice. Millionaires who look broke usually aren't hiding their money out of humility. They're still feeding it back into the machine that made it, because the machine only grows if you keep starving yourself a little longer. Then there's the paperwork, which does something even stranger to the number than reinvestment does. On paper, your income doesn't look like $1.8 million. It looks like a fraction of that because depreciation is doing exactly what it's built to do. 6 fuel storage tank systems, 6 sets of pumps, 6 buildings, the equipment inside every one of them, all of it depreciating on a schedule that lets you write off a chunk of value every single year, even though nothing actually got worse. Run a cost segregation study across your properties and you can accelerate a big piece of that depreciation into the early years instead of spreading it out over 3 decades. That single move can shelter a few $100,000 of taxable income in year 1 alone. Your accountant isn't hiding anything illegal. She's using a tax code that was written, quite literally, to reward people who own hard assets and hire people, instead of people who just draw a salary. The IRS sees a number smaller than $1.8 million. Your bank account eventually sees the real one. 2 different truths, same business, same year. But underneath the tax strategy is something less about spreadsheets and more about instinct. You don't drive a new truck because a new truck tells every vendor, every employee, and every guy filling out a permit application exactly how much room there is to push. You watched what happened to the contractor who read a Rolex on a customer's wrist and adjusted his estimate 40% higher on the spot. You've had employees ask for raises they couldn't justify the week after your wife posted vacation photos. You've had a distributor try to renegotiate terms after noticing you'd bought a boat. Visible wealth isn't a flex when you're the guy 6 people depend on to run a business efficiently. It's a target with a number attached, and everyone who deals with you starts doing math against it whether they mean to or not. Staying boring isn't an accident. It's a defense mechanism you built one uncomfortable lesson at a time. Now put that next to Denise, your general manager making $68,000 a year running 3 of your stores better than most owners run one. She leases a 2023 Tahoe. She posts her Cancun trip every February. Nothing wrong with any of it. She's earned every bit of that salary, and she should enjoy spending it. But she's spending visibly because $68,000 a year is a number that needs to be enjoyed now, spent now, felt now, because there's no second act coming behind it. No store 7 quietly compounding in the background. You're not spending visibly because your money isn't working for enjoyment yet. It's still working for expansion. Same paycheck week, wildly different jobs being asked of the dollars inside it. That's the whole split right there. Denise earns a salary and spends a salary. You earn an equity position in 6 appreciating businesses and mostly reinvested, because the moment you stop, the compounding stops with you. She's rich for a weekend at a time. You're building something that pays out for decades quietly, invisibly, in a way that will never once show up in a parking lot. So here's the actual takeaway, and it's less exciting than a Lambo but a lot more useful. Real wealth, the kind that actually lasts, is almost always boring to look at from the outside. It's not the truck, it's not the watch, it's the ownership stake sitting underneath 6 unglamorous buildings that most people drive past without a second thought, throwing off cash flow every single day whether anyone's watching or not. Now, here's the mistake that quietly costs owners like you more than almost anything else in this business, and it has nothing to do with fuel margins. It's depreciation recapture, the tax bill that shows up the day you finally sell, built entirely out of every deduction you took over the years, arriving all at once, often 6 figures larger than owners expect because nobody warned them it was coming due. That single blind spot has cost real operators more than a bad location ever could. I break down exactly how to plan around it and what else nobody tells you before you sell in the book linked in the description.